I am delighted to be welcomed by Joe this morning. Joe Cheal, thank you so much for joining me in the presenter's hot seat. Joe, you're presenting at the NLP conference in 2024, the virtual part of the conference, and your topic is Reframing Performance Conversations, New Models of Leadership. Now, I personally always like a bit of reframing, so please do tell us a little bit more about you and your presentation.
Okie dokie. Well, I'm Joe, as you said, Joe Cheal with Imaginarium Learning and Development, and been involved in, really, I would say, business psychology for 30 years or so. My fascination is the difference between, and this kind of links perfectly with NLP, is the difference between somebody who's okay at something versus somebody who's very good at it and gets better results as a result, which of course that taps beautifully with NLP. So therefore I'm interested in modeling, but not necessarily to the nth degree of that kind of micro modeling that NLP is quite famous for. It's more about macro modeling kind of behaviors. If you can get into find out what someone was thinking, that's great, but it's really, what are they doing, what are the steps, stages, process that they're using. So that's kind of carried me through beautifully through organizational development and learning and development. So therefore, yes, it's the new models of leadership is really what have I learned over the last 30 years about managers and leaders, and those that do certain things effectively or very effectively versus those that don't. So this is kind of a part two to models of leadership, because last year I did the 3 E's, which was kind of the broader part, and then this year is more specific about, as you said, like that reframing, that difficult conversation, which I think is the bane of most managers' existence. Is you've got somebody who's not performing to standard, or their behavior is not cool, is not up to standard. And so I don't know that many people that kind of go, yay, I get to have one of those conversations today. So it's like, my thing is, how can I therefore make it easier for individuals who perhaps are managing those tough situations? And we know it's tough times, different ways. It's always tough times, but tough times in different ways. And there's a particular peculiarity that has arisen, which is kind of fairly hot off the press. Something that I'm kind of looking into a lot at the moment. I hope this is okay, me just rambling on, by the way.
No, I'm really curious. Carry on.
So I've coined a term, which one day, might be a famous term, who knows, which is the pick and mix mindset. The pick and mix mindset is really somebody who, let's say in a work context, goes, oh yeah, I like doing that. Oh, I don't like doing that, so I'm not going to do it. So but that's part of your job, that's part of your, I know it's not, no, I don't like doing that. So I'm not going to do it. And it's almost like rewind back 15 years. It's just been like, well, then you're not doing the job, just like get out. I know that was probably the worst case way of dealing with it. Whereas now there's also a phrase that's being used, which is, it's not good for my mental health, or it gives me anxiety.
Yes.
Now, apparently, I've been reading in New Scientist just recently, this is happening in schools. So you get like a 7-year-old who goes, I don't like doing maths. It's like, well, you've got to do maths. It's part of the curriculum. Oh, it gives me anxiety. Okay, well, you don't have to do it then. That's I'm exaggerating. Okay, I'm overplaying it a little bit, but that seems to be the way. So mental health terminology, psychotherapeutic terminology is being used within the workplace, just kind of being thrown around, diluting the whole thing. So now this is really kind of background to the talk, because what I'm going to be looking at is, okay, you're now the manager, you're in that situation, you're going to have that conversation and deal with it. But so I thought, rather than do the talk now, which was very kind of like, that would be would be kind of, well, what's some of the new live real context around this. And I also wonder whether the personal development movement the 20th century was kind of known as the century of the self, where people began to zoom in on, moving away from Henry Ford's, you can have whatever, you can have whatever color you like as long as it's black, kind of, for his car,
Yeah.
to Edward Bernays, the whole marketing machine of everyone gets to be different. Then the personal development movement took that on, follow your heart,
Yeah.
all good stuff. But it feels like that has now gone so far that it's like, oh, follow your heart. Oh, okay, well, in that case, I don't have to do that part of my job. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, hold on a minute. We need to bring a balance back to kind of go, yeah, you follow your heart, but take responsibility as well.
Yeah.
Follow your heart, and you still will be doing some of the things that you kind of go, I don't really like doing that.
Yeah.
You know, every single job will have stuff we like doing and stuff we like less.
Yes.
It's like that's part of life.
Yes, yes, which has to be all beautiful. It sounds like that fits in interesting, because a number of conversations I've been having recently is sort of around the spiral dynamics type of thing, and that sort of fluctuation between the we and me as the generations change. And is that a generational thing, that you can have a we generation and a me generation? And you're talking about it, similarly contextually in the time frame of the 20th century and now the 21st century. And wouldn't it be amazing if the 21st century became a bit more we?
Well, yeah, to go back to that, but something needs to happen in order for that to happen. And I know it's not the personal development movement that's responsible necessarily. However, it's part of the social movement to that, and it kind of fascinates me. But I feel for the folks that are having to manage those situations.
Yes, let's hone this back in on what you're going to be talking about, because otherwise
Yes.
we could probably talk for hours.
Yeah, well, it does. As soon as I mention this to anyone, that's why I think I've kind of hit a theme. I know
Yes.
people are talking about it, but it was just as soon as I mention it, people go, whoa! It's like this becomes this huge conversation. So it's a hot topic. That's
Yes.
what I feel like.
And interesting your phrase as well, because I know we use the term pick and mix quite frequently in terms of with the kids and that sort of thing. I mean, the adult children now, but it's not a pick and mix. You can't choose that bit of it and not that bit of it. It's so I think you have definitely got something there.
The next book.
Yes.
So therefore, obviously that session is going to be about that, having that conversation, but there is this context, but there's also about, again, this is very specific, but a job has a contract, this is what your job description is. So it kind of feels like the obvious thing to me is, even at interview stage, if someone's looking quite promising, or towards the end, this is the job description, let's like, how does that sit with you? Then if somebody's offered a job, this is the job description, like that's what you're going to be doing. Then when it comes to induction, this is your job description, this is what you're going to be doing. So there's absolutely crystal clarity and boundaries. And this comes back to the 3 E's, which I talked about last year, is people need, it feels like there's a kind of like, oh, don't worry about boundaries, don't worry about kind of edges, don't worry about that containment of this is specifically what the job is about, and structures and things like that. Let's just go straight for supporting people and kind of going, oh, Jews. Now I'm overdoing it, I'm overplaying it, because it's a paradox. And it's to me, it's the paradox of mental health, actually, which is that would be a whole nother.
That would be an interesting topic. Yes.
So maybe an article for the future for Rapport there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so it's kind of bring it back. There's also a 6 month, in most environments, there's like 6 month probationary period, and so there's around that, having the conversation with the individual, there's got to be some structures, expectations, contracting set. And even if there hasn't been a lot of that going on, if that's outside of the manager's control, it's still day one, the induction into my team. I'm going to go through the job description with you, and and the word resilience springs to mind. Resilience is about, we deal with, we enjoy the stuff we enjoy, but we deal with the stuff that we like less, but we still do it because it's part of the contained thing. And again, apologies, I'm kind of, there's lots of strands on this one, but the nature of anxiety, and totally get that. And if someone is genuine, if someone experiences a true anxiety attack, that is, or panic attack, that is horrific. However, if we then go, oh, well, I won't, oh, therefore I don't like doing that part of the job, it gives me anxiety, so therefore if I don't do that, and then what we're doing is we're just doing this with our life and what our capabilities are. So actually, as a manager, the reframe, There you go. You wanted the reframe. Part of the reframe for the manager is this conversation I'm about to have is not about putting the person down or telling them off. It's about getting things back on track, but
Yeah.
it is helping that person to broaden out again so
Mm.
that they feel less anxiety in life,
Yeah.
potentially. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And as one of those people who, especially in my teens and 20s, experienced that anxiety, and there was that opportunity to actually, my world became narrower and narrower and narrower. And, so it absolutely makes sense. So what practical learnings will delegates take away from your session, apart from what you've just told us?
Well, all of that, as I say, is kind of context that I might mention, but I didn't want to get into the actual talk itself. So in terms of what people are going to take away, they will get first of all, that kind of the nature of getting in the right mindset to have that conversation. That's the starting point. Then, knowing that there are a whole bunch of different possible causes as to why somebody's performance might drop or their behavior becomes below par. What do you then do? Even if you find that out, what can you do as a manager? Practically, what can you do? On the ground, what can you do? Then that's what kind of like the preparation. Then there's the structure of having the conversation. So this was the bit that was modeled from nearly 100 hours of observing pre-disciplinary one-to-ones many years ago. So there's actually a what called a kind of CLEAR, which is the acronym. Trainers love their acronyms. So this is like the CLEAR conversation, which I won't tell you what the details of that are now. But that therefore that gives you a kind of like it's not an agenda. It's simply a go-to points that need to be spoken during that conversation. And the other thing will be, how do you deal with all the defensive stuff, all the defensive, oh, it wasn't me, it wasn't my fault, it was someone else, oh, you've upset me now, oh, it was, oh, you're picking on me, etc., etc. So how do you then deal, which probably loops us all the way back to the beginning of the conversation about people going, oh, it's not you're giving me feedback and it's upsetting me. Okay. I was like, okay, well, let's fine, let's work through that. Rather than, okay, well, I won't give you feedback anymore. That becomes a defensive routine in a sense, and totally valid. And in that person's map of the world is completely right. That, oh, they've upset me. That it's someone else's fault. You're picking on me. I don't normally do that. All of those things are valid in that person's map of the world. And that's again where the reframing part comes in. As an effective manager, an effective leader, you have to be an effective reframer as well, to be able to have that conversation and put things in a different light and in a different way.
Absolutely. And just hearing what you're saying and hearing what you said earlier, even though this is in the context of leadership, and potentially in the context of organizational management and that sort of thing, actually, it sounds to me like everything that you're describing can be put into any leadership role. And for leadership, read parenting, read relation, there's because we're always a leader somewhere. So it sounds like, even though you're honing in on a context, actually it's very applicable in so many different areas. And probably would be very beneficial to be applied in certain areas. So that sounds, it sounds really exciting. So is there anything that delegates can do before your session to give them a sort of deeper understanding or a better experience during your session?
I think, as with usual, with my ones, it's just reflect, just have a think about situations. If you happen to be a leader or a manager, situations you've been in the past, but also things you've seen happen as well. Colleagues you might have worked with, you just thought, oh, for goodness sake, why doesn't the manager do something about this? And what would you have done differently in that context? And thinking about the managers that have been really effective as well, the good managers. And again, I say managers, I say leaders. I tend to think we lead people and we manage resources, but people are resources. I think I spoke about that last time. But so I will bring those two things together, because I think there's particularly having the tough conversation, there is a management element to this of getting the resources back in place. But at the same time, you want to win them over as well, win them hearts and minds, so that they feel okay and engaged about going forward and performing or behaving okay. So no, I think it's just reflect, have a think about scenarios you've been in, and good ones, less than good ones, what happened, and then we'll explore what could you do differently.
Yes, I love that. I love that phrase, that question. So, so what inspired you to want to present at the NLP conference, Joe?
Well, it's something I love doing. I mean, it's kind of it's something I've done quite a few times, and I generally I always love to be this sounds awful, but I love to be the person in front of the camera rather than behind it, which again is the person with the flip chart rather than sitting in the audience. However, I think it's just ideas and concepts and models that I like to share. But of course, the NLP conference is, that's part of my DNA, part of my background, part of my. I think if I hadn't encountered NLP 30 years ago or so, I think my journey would have been very different. I don't think I'd have modelled in the same way. I don't think I'd have kind of looked for and put together packaged models in that way. So therefore, the kind of from why conference? I love speaking. I love speaking at conferences. Why NLP? Because it's part of my DNA. And I didn't even say this earlier on, as a master trainer of NLP, it behooves me to keep in touch with the NLP community as well.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Joe. Well, I'm very excited about your presentation. I can think of many contexts already where that could be applied. So, so to remind people watching, Joe Cheal is presenting at the NLP conference, the virtual element of the conference, which will be Saturday, the 10th of February at 11 a.m., which will be GMT because it's February. And your topic is Reframing Performance Conversations, New Models of Leadership. So thank you so much for your time today, Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and really looking forward to your session in February.
Thank you.